Welcome everyone to the District 32 House of Representatives Virtual Town Hall. My name is Malcom Chapman and I partnered with Elevate Rapid City to be the moderator of today's event. We are excited that you chose to be a part of this afternoon session as we invite local legislative candidates to share their platform, their ideas, and their story. In these uncertain times, public meetings and traditional campaign events are difficult to facilitate. So we hope that these webinars can help serve as the public's opportunity to hear the candidates themselves. Today, we have joining us in the race for District 32 State House of Representatives, Becky, Republican running for District 32 House, Chris Johnson, who will be joining us shortly, also Republican running for District 32 House, and Toni Diamond, Democrat running for District 32 House. These candidates do not have a primary election, but will be on the ballot come November 3rd general election. Just a little bit about myself, and I'm just going to take just a moment to say I hope that everyone out here who's participating and who can hear this message and hear our voices and see our faces today are being safe and being healthy, and I just wish you, your family, and your circle nothing but good health and safety. Just quickly, a little bit about my background. I'm a former Marine officer, former city council member here in Rapid City, longtime Rapid City resident, and a speaker and facilitator and moderator and host of meetings across the country. I would now like to set the stage for this town hall. We are first going to introduce each candidate by alphabetical order by last name, and each candidate will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves. As the candidates run through their introductions, the audience is encouraged to submit questions through the question and answer feature on your screen. Once introductions are finished, I will begin to share questions that are received from the audience through the Q&A feature. Each candidate will have a chance to respond, and each candidate has 2 minutes to provide their answer before we move to the next candidate. We will rotate who has the first question to respond based on alphabetical order, again, by last name. We have the ability to export all questions that are submitted through the Q&A, so if your specific question is not read aloud, we encourage the candidates to address your question directly. We will do our best to ask as many questions as time limit allows. We will conclude once the stream of audience questions expires or we reach the time limit. There are 2 questions we sent the candidates ahead of time to prepare. I will cover these topics if not prompted by an audience question. We will conclude promptly at 4 o'clock to be respectful of everyone's time. Finally, a few guidelines. As a reminder, only questions received through the Q&A feature will be submitted to the moderator to ask the candidates. We will not address questions through the chat feature. I, as the moderator, will strictly enforce the time limits, and I will hold up a red card when the candidate has 30 seconds left. After 2 minutes, the candidate will be muted so that we can move on to the next candidate or the next question. Most importantly, we will ask you to treat all candidates and other webinar attendees with respect. If you abuse this Zoom chat feature in an inappropriate or derogatory manner, we reserve the right to dismiss you from the Zoom webinar. And with that, let's get started. Toni, you can start us off with your introduction.
Yes, hi. My name is Toni Diamond. I'm running for District 32 as Democratic candidate.
Toni, you're muted.
Am I still muted? Can you hear me? Is it working now? Can you hear me?
Toni, can you hear me? If you can, give me a thumbs up. We're going to come back to you, Toni. We're going to go to the next candidate, and then we'll work you back in, though. So with that, we'll go to Becky Drury.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Elevate, for hosting these events. My husband, Neil, and I have lived in Rapid City for 20 years. We have 2 lovely daughters and 5 wonderful grandchildren. We're blessed that they all live right here in the Rapid City area. I grew up on a farm ranch in Milesville, South Dakota, which is north of Phillip. My dad raised beef and wheat predominantly. And then during college, I worked in a small town down the highway that touted free ice water. So I have a lot of background with agriculture and tourism, which we all know is vital and is facing some hard economic times right now. I have a career in telecommunications for over 20 years. I worked in that field. I served on the Wall School Board, and currently I'm serving on the Rapid City City Council, and I love serving on the council. I've really dug in as a council member and did my homework. I visited the different entities at the city. I mean, everything from the landfill to the city finance office. And I did that not only to educate myself, but to build a rapport with those directors and those workers. And so that when it came down to vote on issues, I really had people to go to, and I really could understand what was going on. Last year, I was the vice chair of the council, and this year I am chairing the legal and finance. And of course, serving on the council, you're blessed because you are given the ability to serve on many committees that are organized or supported by the city. I'm a member of the Parkview E-Free Church. Last year, before the schools closed, I helped with their Awana program, which is their Wednesday night program. And those kids bring such joy to your heart when you work with them. And it really makes you feel that, you know, our country is going to be in good hands because there's just so many great kids out there. Most summer mornings, you can find me biking along on the bike path along Rapid Creek, or I'm out on the Mickelson Trail. And there's just really no better way to start your day than biking up and down the trail. I've been a member of Skyline Toastmasters since 2010. And in 2018, I received my Distinguished Toastmaster Award. The thing I like about Toastmasters is just not a group or a club to belong to. It really has turned into another family. I have priorities in life, and they are God, family, friends, and my duty to serve. So I would just like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to just share a little bit about myself. Thank you, Malcolm.
Becky, thank you. And now we'll go with Toni.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Toni Diamond. I'm happy to be running for this House of Representatives. I am a Marine also, so Semper Fi. Served 6 years, served in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, so fellow veteran, so thank you for your service. I am, right now my full-time job is a CNA/med aid. I work at a retirement home, so we're deeply impacted by this whole coronavirus thing. It's a hard issue for me. I mean, having to work with families and who can't see their loved ones is troubling. So yes, I want to do everything that I can to help us beat this, get the curb under so that we can get people back to seeing their loved ones. I've been a resident of Rapid City for a few years now. I moved to the Black Hills about 6 years ago. Fell in love with it from the day one that I moved here. I love the Black Hills. I do consider this home now. I am a board member of the Black Hills Center for Equality. I believe in getting involved in the community and helping people, being a voice for those who don't have a voice, and standing up for those who are afraid to stand up for themselves. I think we all have equal rights, and I want to fight for that. I want to do what I can to help Rapid City and South Dakota continue to move forward, to continue to be the best. So whatever I can do to help them. I am a proud mother of one. My daughter just had her second baby yesterday. So I'm excited. And Malcolm, it's my grandson's name is Malcolm. He was just born last night at 7:59, so a great name. So very sad that I can't be in Colorado Springs holding that little one right now and waiting until the travel bans are lifted or until it's safe to travel. So kind of distracted by that. But other than that, I love serving people. I love working with people. I look forward to working with my other legislators if I get elected and doing my part to make Rapid City and South Dakota great. Thank you.
I didn't hear your audio, Malcolm, but I'm guessing you'd introduce me. Okay. Hi, I'm Chris Johnson. I'm a representative for District. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm representative for District 32. My history is I grew up in Highmore, South Dakota, East River, and graduated from high school there and moved to Rapid City in 1980. When I was 20 years old. That dates me, I guess, but so be it. I joined the National Guard in 1980 and was happy to serve. And I want to thank my fellow candidates for joining us on this. And thank you for your service, Toni, in the Marines. That's much appreciated. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a very patriotic person. I can't help it. But after coming back from National Guard or from basic training in AIT, I went to work for the Rapid City Journal. I worked for them for 13 years. And so I basically had 2 jobs in Rapid City since I've been here for the past 40 years. I worked for 13 years at the Rapid City Journal, then went to work for my in-laws at the clock shop. And most people probably know me from changing your watch battery, maybe many times. We've done that over the years so much, I can't, we've done tens of thousands of them. But so I've been a business owner for the last 20 years, since 2000. My wife and I took over the business from my in-laws. And so I'm very keen on business, and so I guess you could say I'm pro-business. If you want to know my beliefs, you just go down the line on the Republican platform. That's my system of beliefs. So I'm pro-business, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-family, and definitely pro-economic development. So much so that I started my own podcast called Amplify Rapid City. And that's all about developing Rapid City economically, even in the times of the COVID virus here. I served for 8 years as vice president of the Downtown Association, for 7 years on the board of Visit Rapid City, and I ended my last year as chair there. I served for 6 years on the South Dakota Retailers Board. I was elected in 2018 after filling the slot for Sean McPherson, who had unfortunately passed away. And so I was on the ballot for the general election, and so I won in 2018. And then after being elected, I was also subsequently elected to the executive board in the legislature. That has been a real honor to serve on that executive board. I passed one bill my first term last year, and that was as prime sponsor of what's come to be known as the National Motto Bill, SB 55 last year. So I'm happy to say that the national motto is on display in all the schools across South Dakota, all the public schools across South Dakota. So with that, I'll leave it. It's nice to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Malcolm, you need to unmute.
I'll second that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Now we can.
We'll
Or
start.
I can.
We'll start the questioning with Toni. Do you support increased funding for education and following the law of rate of inflation or 3%, whichever is less, every year, regardless of budget constrictions?
Thank you for the question. I do, yes, my answer would be yes. I do support increases in rate for education. I believe education is essential and very critical to our growth. If we don't give the people, the youth and those that are attending any vocation here, the opportunity to be trained by the best, then how do we expect to produce the best? So yes, I would support legislation, even if it's, I would not make that an option. That would have to be something that we would have to enforce, find a way to make it happen in the budget. We made that promise. I'm a person who likes to keep her promise, and as a state representative, I will do my best to make that promise and keep that promise.
Thank you. And next we'll go with Becky. Same question. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I think I've got it, Malcolm. It's our law that we give these teachers those raises. And we do have the option between the 3% or the cost of living increase. So there is some flexibility there, but I've kind of likened that to our own home budget. When you are required to pay something, let's say in my house, I have taxes to pay, then maybe I have to shave off some of my other expenses. And I think that as a state, especially now, we've asked our teachers to really step up these past couple months with the COVID and teaching from home. And next year, there's going to be even more emphasis on their job, because they are not only going to be teaching their grade level, they are going to have to catch those children up from what they've missed this past year. And we know there's a tremendous amount of students that are missing because they don't have access to computers or internets. So I really support teacher education pay. And if we are not going to support it at the legislature, I think the law needs to be changed. Because as it stands right now, and I wouldn't vote to change it, I really feel we need to pay our teachers. Thank you.
Becky, thank you. Chris?
Thank you for the question, and I'm going to agree with both the other candidates on the point that it is the law. This was written into the law as part of the deal for a couple of years ago, the Partridge Amendment, when it came through, and so we must follow what is in the law. We also have a law for a balanced budget. And this year we faced a dilemma between balancing the budget or getting that 3% or the CPI pushed through to the teachers. And this coming year, we are going to be facing a real dilemma, because we have 32,000 people unemployed right now. I will absolutely also agree that I want to applaud the teachers and everyone in education for stepping up to the plate and going above and beyond during this pandemic. But I would add to it that everybody is stepping up. Everybody in the business community is stepping up, and we're all trying to beat this thing down, but all sectors of our economy are suffering greatly. So when it comes to a question of do we balance the budget or do we give the 3%, I think in this environment right now that we're in, when we're facing astronomical shortfalls in revenue, I don't see how we're going. Something has to give somewhere. Okay, I am all for following the law as it's written, but when we have a requirement to have a balanced budget every time we pass a budget, then it presents a very big dilemma. So where one has to sacrifice, I believe everybody should sacrifice at the same time. So we'll just have to see how it shakes out. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. And this question will start with Becky. What would you prioritize in the state budget so that South Dakota can rebuild, and how?
Well, that's a tough question. Having not served in the legislature yet, I'll tell you what I prioritize at the city level, and that is police, fire, and roads. However, at the state level, to rebuild during this COVID, I think it really has to be economic development. We've done a really good job of that in Rapid City. We have the Ascent Innovation Center. We have the B21 coming. And we have different Elevate, which is hosting today, who has really done a good job of reaching out and trying to bring different jobs in. But I think it really has to be the economic development. With the B21 coming, we're going to have thousands of people coming to work for that. You know, we are going to have the military people coming. We are going to have contractors coming. And these aren't just contractors. These are going to be high paying, good wage jobs. And with that, we need a place for them to live. We need convenience stores. We're building new schools. So I think it's just economic development. I think the B21 is going to help immensely on our side of the state. But I also think with the city, with their investment in places like Elevate, that is also a great way to promote new industries coming in.
Thank you. Chris, the same question, and I'll read it again. What would you prioritize in the state budget so that South Dakota can rebuild, and how?
Well, once again, I'm going to agree with one of my other candidates in that economic development is at the top of my list. And so thank you, Becky, for that contribution. And I agree with you. Now, how we achieve that is very important because as one of my guests on my podcast, Amplify Rapid City, and I'm not promoting this because I don't make any money with this podcast, it's a public service, but Tom Johnson, the director of Elevate, the CEO of Elevate, joined me for that podcast, and we interviewed a man by the name of Jonathan Williams, and he wrote a book called Rich States, Poor States. And that book illustrates how businesses and people are flocking away from states with higher taxes to states with lower taxes for economic reasons. And we need to continue to take advantage of that, especially in this COVID situation, because if anybody's paid any attention, the federal government right now is fighting over whether to bail out the states that have been irresponsible with their pension funds, which South Dakota, I'm so happy to say, has not. We're the best in the country on it. And when those kind of situations arise, we have to take advantage of it economically by letting everybody know, look, if you come to South Dakota and move your business here or move here for a job, you're not going to be strapped with all the taxes over your head from these wayward pension funds and bad investments as other states have made. So keeping taxes low in our state is very important. So that comes with some responsibility. And so I believe in responsible government, but keeping taxes low so we can balance our budget and attract business. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. Toni, do you need me to read the question again?
No, thank you. I agree with Becky and with Chris on what they've said. I agree. Economically, that's got to be number one. That impacts everything else. If we grow economically, that's going to boost the money for schools, boost money for the teachers, boost money for the infrastructures that need to be updated and maintained. So yeah, I think economically we have to look at how can we attract more business. What can we do with existing business? What are there any ways to give them incentives to do more, to maybe like do like a mentoring process? You know, are they going to help other businesses grow? Because it's going to be, we have to work together to make this happen. It can't just be one person or one entity doing it. It has to be all of us working together. So I love what Elevate is doing, you know, giving these small businesses opportunities to grow. And I think that's a great thing. We need to be doing more of that. We need to be looking into other types of like solar energy or things like that. What can we do to help boost our economy and bring in more money? Because yeah, we need to maintain what we have. And if we want it to grow, we have to be able to grow with it. So how do we grow economically? I think that's our number one thing that we need to look at.
Toni, thank you. This next question will start with Chris. Relative to the discussion of strategies to handle issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think expansion of Medicare and Medicaid could happen in South Dakota?
Well, we're seeing things that we never believed. Thank you for the question, by the way. We're seeing things that we never could have believed would happening right before our eyes right now. Who would have ever thought that we would see a mass closing of businesses all across the country and 20 million people being unemployed across our country and 32,000 right here in South Dakota. So anything can happen. I don't see us going down that road of a Medicaid expansion because that all has to be paid for by taxpayers. It just kind of goes against our identity as South Dakotans. We are very conservative people out here. We operate on one of the smallest budgets in the country. And we have to keep in mind that Medicaid expansion is, yes, we will benefit by the government on a short term sending us more money, but we're also going to pay for it as federal taxpayers at the same time, just as we would if we were bailing out some of these states like Illinois and California and New York for their pension funds. So what seems like a benefit can sometimes be forgotten after the first few years taper off, and then we're left with the mandate and we don't have the federal subsidies anymore. So again, being responsible is what's most important here. I do not see us expanding Medicaid in South Dakota. I would not support it. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. Toni, the same question. Do you need me to read it again?
Yes, please.
Relative to the discussion, relative to the discussion of strategies to handle issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think expansion of Medicare and Medicaid could happen in South Dakota?
Well, as somebody just running for office, I've not actually been impacted by that. I don't know a lot about that. I would have to do some research. I agree with Chris. I wouldn't want to add something that's going to cause an economic challenge for us. I wouldn't want to add an increased burden to the state or to the residents of South Dakota. I would want to bring in something that's going to help benefit South Dakotans, not hinder them or cripple them. We want to be able to attract people to come work here. We want to attract businesses to come work here. And if we're adding more stuff that's going to make them not want to come, then yeah, we really need to look at it. So would I say yes or no? I can't say because I'd have to really do some research on it to be better informed. But I would say that I want to do whatever I can to give, healthcare to our residents. Everybody should be entitled to it. If they're not, then we need to find ways that we can do it that aren't going to impact us economically, but then that are going to help us.
Thank you. Becky.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I probably don't have a very good answer for this. I agree with a lot with what Chris said. At the state level, can our budget support it? And if it can't, then we shouldn't probably raise it at this time. If it's something that we can look at down the road, I know there's been talk about it. I'm not that familiar with it either, Toni, so don't feel bad. I think there's been a lot of government programs out there lately, the PPP, the care crisis, the $1,000 that people are getting. So our federal government's done a good job of stepping in and trying to fill some gaps. But as far as Medicare and Medicaid, I don't know that South Dakota is going to be able to afford that for a year or two based on the revenue coming in with everything will be down as far as ag prices are down, tourism's going to be down. That's going to have an effect across the state.
Becky, thank you. So our next questions, we'll start with Toni. How should the state spend the $1.25 billion in federal COVID money? So the question is, how should the state spend the $1.25 billion in federal COVID money?
Very good question. Thank you. I would say that we'd have to look at where is the greatest need and where is it going to benefit us the most. We don't want to just throw money into a pot and say, here, take it. We want to make sure that how it's going to be used is going to be used most effectively. Do I know the answer to that? No, I would have to sit down with my local legislators and with local businesses and local government and figure out, okay, what is the best way to spend this money? And also, how do we do it in such a way that it is going to benefit everybody, not just business, not just people of South Dakota. So I'd really want to take a look at what are the I'd want to hear what some proposals are. I would want to look at and talk to people and find out where they say the needs are the greatest, and then maybe even put together a panel to say, hey, let's look at what we need to put this money on, and then make sure that we're very transparent in how we're spending that money, so people don't say that it's where did the money go. We want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible with what's given to us, and so that we benefit the people of South Dakota. So yeah, I think I would say put together a panel. Let's look at how we can best use the money. Where is it needed most? What's going to do, what areas would it most benefit? So I think helping local business in ways that are going to help the economy would probably be one way to look at it. But do we help our schools? Do we help the hospitals? So I really want to take a look at it, and really, so I don't have a direct answer for that, but I would say I would definitely research it and come up with the best answer with a team of people to help me do it.
Toni, thank you. Becky?
Oh, darn, I wish you were going to go to Chris first, because he probably has the answer to this. I really don't. I know that Governor Noem's been frustrated because that has some strings to it, and she's not being able to use it for what she wants to be able to use it for. It'd be nice if we could use that to fill in those gaps, like for education and Medicaid and pensions, state salaries. But it's my understanding that that's not what the government's going to let us use that for, the federal government. So if they aren't going to let us use it for that, hopefully they would be willing to let us use it for more economic development or infrastructure. And those would be great places for it. And I think we will all be surprised how fast that money goes. Thank you.
Becky, thank you. Chris?
Thank you for the question, and thank you both for your answers. Becky, you're right. There are strings attached, and I feel I'm sorry that I've actually been able to have conversations with the legislature and with the governor about this, and so I am more informed on it. But so I understand what those strings are. Unfortunately, I wish we could just sit down and decide how to spend that money, but unfortunately, that's not the case. That money does come. It cannot be used for revenue replacement in our government at this point. I'm happy to say that Governor Noem is fighting to try to get some of that money available to replace some of the revenue we've lost as a state. But that's still up in the air, and that's one of the big fights in Washington. Right now, the way it stands, there are huge guidelines on that money so that it can only be used for direct COVID pandemic relief. And we don't even know who that can go to. Right now, it's supposed to go to businesses and the healthcare and airports, but there are stipulations on what they can use that money for. It cannot be anything that's already in our budget. So we can't use it to replace any of the funds we've lost. And we still don't have the guidance, the proper guidance from the federal government yet on how we can work that money into our economy, but it's coming. We believe it's going to continue to unfold, and hopefully we will have some control over it. But unfortunately, at this point, I think there's going to be very strict control, and we may not be able to use some of it, unfortunately, because of the guidelines from the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question starts off with Becky. What would you suggest besides economic development to increase state revenues? Would you be open to reducing this? Would you be open to reducing the list of sales tax exemptions?
Well, I think that's a sticky wicket. I think most of those exemptions were put in maybe by lobbyists at one time. I'm not even sure. But if you're going to try to take away the sales tax exemptions, let's say from marketing, advertising, then you've got a whole bucket of advertisers and people that print ink that are going to be down your throat. Or if you want to take exemptions away from farm equipment. Here we have the farmers in dire needs right now. You know, cattle prices are low, although in the grocery store, they're high. So I think that that is, I don't know how those all got in, to tell you the truth. It'd be nice if you could get rid of some of them, I'm sure, but how you target that, I think would be difficult. I don't know if you could do, I don't really know how you would get rid of those. It's just going to be difficult. It might be something we just get to live with. One of those, just get to live with it. So I'm not going to propose anything there. Sorry.
Thank you. Next, Toni. What would you suggest besides economic development to increase state revenues? Would you be open to reducing the list of sales tax exemptions?
Okay, if we were going in order, was Chris next? I just don't want to take his turn if he is supposed to be next.
No, Toni, it's your turn.
Okay. All right. Again, not being in the legislative, not really being completely, I would be like Becky. I would have to do some research on that. What are those exemptions that are already in place? I think a good thing would be to review what exemptions are in place. Are they benefiting us? And if they are, let's leave them in place. If they are not benefiting us in local business, in the economy, and in the state, then let's find out what we have to do to remove them. I believe we need to be responsible in all that we do. So looking at the existing exemptions, do they work? Great. Don't do anything about it. If they don't work, let's find a way to remove them legally, and properly. Again, we want to make people want to come to work here. We want to make businesses want to come and grow here and build here. So short answer would be, let's review them. If they help, great. If they don't, let's find ways of getting them out of them.
Toni, thank you. And I stand corrected, Maureen. It was Chris's turn, but we'll go to Chris now. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if that benefited Toni or not, but I thought it was a good answer. So there was an attempt to remove sales, the exemption for advertisers this last year, and it crash landed with a thud. And these things kind of seem like a great idea. It's so tempting. You can think about all the money it's going to generate for revenue, but until you dive into it, and then you find out it's not such a great idea. Because, for example, that would have really hurt the advertising agencies across South Dakota and anybody who handles advertising, because quite honestly, I believe that any money that the businesses would have to pay in sales tax, they would just reduce their amount of advertising in response to that. And so you'd see a big reduction in advertising across the state, which isn't good either. I'm going to point back to our pension fund. We are the star shining on the hill in the United States when it comes to pension funds. We're the only state that is funded to the level that we are compared to all the other 50 states. And there are states in the country that are so buried. In Kentucky, it's in their state Supreme Court right now because they have mishandled their pension funds so badly that the people that were supposed to be receiving it are taking the state to court over it. I think that we should promote our state for tax purposes and let people know that you're not going to be strapped with that kind of a burden tax-wise. And so you should locate your business here. And if we can expand our economy, then the revenues will just automatically go up by the expansion of the economy organically. And I'm a big believer in that. Not only that, you want to think outside the box. Let's let our pension fund investment group take on some of these other states' wayward pension funds. All we'd have to do is charge them a fee and we could make them money. Thank you.
You, and thank all three of you for those answers. We're going to start with Chris again on this one, and this is along the same lines. Some South Dakotans are concerned about raising taxes and rely solely on tax revenue growth. Do you agree with that, or can a combination of other sources of revenue be relied on, such as user fees?
Well, if I had to choose between the two, you know, I guess I would expand user fees over raising taxes. I'm absolutely opposed to new taxes like an income tax in South Dakota. It would just hurt us beyond measure. I think that the low taxes are our drawing point for bringing businesses in here. It's one of the biggest sales points, and now more than ever, with the economic troubles in this country, this is what we can build our economy on, is our low tax burden. We have one of the lowest tax burdens of any state in the country, personal tax burdens. So we need to keep in mind that that is our trump card. Pardon the pun. I don't mean that to point to the president or anything, but it's our trump card when it comes to attracting these businesses that very few states can offer. And so that environment for them to operate freely and make a profit and not be punished for it, and whether you be a business person or an individual coming into our state, that is a big selling point for our state. So if we can grow the economy, we grow the revenue. We don't have to even think about raising taxes. So I'm not for raising taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Toni, the same question. Do you need me to read it again?
No, I think I got it. I agree with Chris. I would not want to raise taxes. Again, we want to attract local businesses and businesses to come into South Dakota and into Rapid City. I agree that that is what economic growth is going to happen when we have more businesses here. I would want to look at what other types of things can we do. Again, looking at solar energy. I mean, that's a huge untapped, we have so much open space. Let's work with the farmers to do solar fields. That would generate income, that would generate jobs, that would generate businesses, you know? So, I mean, again, let's not user fees. If it's, you know, you may not attract users if you're going to charge them a lot of money, but so let's look at ways that are going to help and not hinder. A business is not going to want to come if they're going to have to charge their users tons of fees. But we have to find a way that's going to be viable and that's going to work and that's going to help everybody. So I would say let's look at other options before we go increasing taxes and before we increase user fees. That would be my answer.
Toni, thank you. Becky.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to ditto the other folks on, I don't believe raising taxes is the last resort. I do believe, like in the city, we have enterprise funds, and those funds have to cover their costs. So for example, the water department, their charges are based on covering their costs. I think we need to be really mindful of doing things like that across the state. So if our landfills, if they're a losing project, maybe I'm sorry your garbage rates need to go up a little bit. But we shouldn't be losing money on different enterprises that we have out there or different entities that we have out there in government. We should be able to cover our costs. I'm not saying make a profit off of them, but making good decisions, not going crazy, but covering the costs of providing the services to our constituents.
Thank you. This next question will start with Toni, and this is really a follow-up to the Medicaid question. If you are not in favor of expanding Medicaid, are you willing to increase funding to workers' compensation coffers due to the increased risks to South Dakota workers?
Thank you for the question. I don't know the answer to that. That would be something that I would definitely have to look into. So I don't want to speak to something I don't know about. I don't want to speak without having the knowledge to answer that question properly. That would be something I would want to do some research on to see if that would be a viable solution.
Thank you. Becky.
Yeah, I'm not up on that either, Toni. Don't feel bad, please. But I think for workers' compensation, the employers pay into that somewhat. And then that goes through a whole process when you file workers' compensation. And if the question is, do we need to raise the workers' compensation, the amount the employers pay to cover the costs on the workers' compensation claims, then I would say just what I said before. If we're going to have an enterprise, a funding mechanism, it needs to cover that cost. Thank you.
And Chris?
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. Seems like a simple solution, doesn't it? But Becky was right on this, that the work comp fund is funded by premiums paid in by businesses for their employees. And if you want to say, well, we need more money in the in the workers' compensation fund to satisfy people that are going to come down with COVID, or to ease the pain economically of this pandemic, I think you're barking up the wrong tree, because employers have been damaged beyond imagination, and it's just going to start unfolding how serious that situation is right now. Over the next couple of months, you're going to start to see, as the revenue numbers start being reported. Again, the fact that we have 30,000 people in South Dakota on unemployment right now isn't the fault of the businesses. We did not order the shutdown, okay? We closed because we were law-abiding citizens, and we want to follow the guidelines, but we are the victims. The business community is. And so why punish the business community by raising their work comp rates? You're just going to lose employees that way. I think they'll hire fewer employees because they don't want that burden anymore. So I think that would be a bad idea. Thank you. I'm sorry. It's just it's not a solution that I would be in favor of.
Thank you. We're going to move to our final question. Why are you the best candidate for the position in the state legislature? What differentiates you as a leader in this community? And we'll start with Becky.
Well, thank you. When I look out there, I really don't look out and see myself as a politician. When I ran for the city council, I didn't run because I was against something or anything like that. I just felt like I could be a voice for my neighbors. And I really feel like I've done that on the city council. And that doesn't mean I pleased everyone, because you're never going to please everyone. But I will tell you that I do my homework. I reached out, I made all those touch points with all the directors and the different divisions in Rapid City, and I established those rapports. Now, City Council has, in prior days, had some pretty tenuous relationships, and we have really worked at the council to build good relationships. When I walk out of the City Council after a meeting, I never feel like I'm walking out of there and people don't like me, my fellow council members. Even if we don't vote the same, we have built a sense of community within the council, that we are not divisive, we are not mad at each other. And I think that is so important, that we're able to work with each other. And we have libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, and I don't know what else up there, because we're nonpartisan. But we really work together. And even if we don't vote the same, we're a unified body. So I think that that's one of the things I can really bring, is I listen, I work hard, and I will really work to work together.
Becky, thank you. Chris.
Thank you for the question. I'm actually very humbled to be part of this panel, and I think we have four great candidates. Three of them that are on this panel today are fantastic. I'm not going to paint myself as the best candidate here. I think that everybody's going to have to make a choice. I'm going to tell you what my qualifications are, though. Outside of the first 3 years of my life, we moved to Hudson, South Dakota when I was 3 from Minnesota. I've been a lifelong South Dakotan. The roots in my family in South Dakota go back 3 generations before me. So I'm happy to say I have grandchildren right here in Rapid City who are 6th generation South Dakotans. I love this state. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. It's the best place in the world. I have had a history of operating a business, so I understand business. I understand the perils that come with running a business, and the biggest one being intrusion from the government on being able to make a profit and employ people and share that. I have been a community leader for many, many years. I've been involved with South Dakota retailers, the Visit Rapid City, with the Downtown Association. I'm a huge advocate for our city, for our economy. I'm pro-life, pro-gun, pro-economy, pro-business, pro-Republican platform. So if you want a Republican to serve, I'm as good a adherent person who adheres to the platform as anybody. And I want to do it. I have the time to do it, and I have the fire in the gut to do it. And so I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. And Toni.
Thank you. I want to first say thank you to Becky and Chris for being part of this panel. It's been a pleasure to get to share it this time with you guys. I would have to say I don't consider myself the best. I am a team player. I believe, well, one of the things I learned as a Marine, we are only as strong as our weakest link. So as in the Marines, I learned, you don't cut off the weakest part. You strengthen that weakest part. You help that weak part become just as strong as the rest of the body. And that way together, we are able to adapt and overcome any situation that occurred. And I would bring that to working in the state legislation. I would be, I'm cross the aisle and talk to those that are working up there. I would talk. It was like, we got to work together to make change here. We got to work together to bring this economy up. We have to work together to do what needs to be done. I'm a person that believes in hard work. My dad immigrated from outside the country, so I know the definition of hard work. I used to go to work with him, and he worked as a janitor just so that I could have an opportunity. And here I am, served as a Marine. I've traveled the world. I lived as a missionary for 6 years in Africa. So I know how blessed we are in this country. Living in South Dakota, I've gotten to know the people, and I would be working with the people, with local business, with families, and doing what we can to benefit them. So am I the best? I will give my best, I can tell you that.
Thank all 3 of you for those answers. Here's an opportunity now just for time for you to conclude with any final opportunities that you might. You will each get 1 minute closing comments, and you can take that anywhere you'd like in that 1 minute. I will still hold up the red card at 30 seconds, and we'll start with Chris.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be on this panel. It's a huge honor. I just want to reiterate that I'm humbled to serve the state of South Dakota. It's a state I love. It's a huge honor to serve in Pierre. After one term, I could not want more to be able to go back and continue doing what we're doing, which is trying to protect families, protect businesses, protect the citizens of South Dakota from the bad things that could come our way by bad legislation. I just want to add that I have had the honor of meeting both of the candidates that are on this panel today and talking with them, and I've had great conversations with them. I think they're both quality people, and I want to thank them for joining this. It's a big sacrifice to run for office, but I believe they both have that kind of spirit, and I appreciate that, and I'm honored to be among this company with 3 good South Dakotans. And then you, Malcom, you're a fantastic South Dakotan as well. So thank you for hosting. Thanks, Elevate, and thank you, Ken.
You're unmuted.
Oh, did you not hear me? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Toni.
I'd like to say thank you to Elevate for hosting this. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to get and join this panel. I was just blown away to get my name on the ballot and that people believe in me. I'm a very humble person. I will fight for those things I believe in. I will fight for people. You can ask those that know me. I'm a fighter. I've had to fight all my life, and I will fight for you. I will fight for our state. I will fight for our economy and do whatever it takes to make us the best.
Toni, thank you. And Becky.
Well, I also would like to thank Elevate for hosting this, and I just want to thank the listeners for tuning in and taking the opportunity to watch this. I'd just like you to know that I am a person of integrity. If I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. I listen, I do my homework, and I really see myself as more of a servant than a politician. I don't take your trust or your vote lightly. It means a lot to me. I really do love Rapid City. I love South Dakota. I'm a South Dakota girl. And I would just respectfully ask that you vote for me on November 3rd. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of myself and Elevate Rapid City, we thank you, the audience, for the time you spent hearing District 32 House candidates. We are also very grateful for the candidates of Becky and Chris and Toni for spending time and participating and sharing their perspectives with us today. Please keep in mind the date of November 3rd. Please keep in mind the date of November 3rd when the general election will be held. If you have any questions about voting or the elections, please reach out to Elevate. We are taking a short break and we'll begin our next session with District 32 Senate candidates promptly at 4:15. You will need to find a separate registration link for the Senate candidates, so refer back to your email inbox. For those of you who have yet to register, please refer to the chat box where we posted the link to register for the Senate session. We thank you all and be safe.